car. G'day folks, welcome to Australian Car. Oh, just a sec, the shoelaces undone. Oh, that feels way better. So folks, here we are in Queensland. We're going to be meeting some wonderful people on this episode of Australian Car Collector, and we're going to introduce you to the Rolls-Royce and Bentley Owners Club of Australia. Folks, I'm really excited about this. We're here at the open day, the public open day for the Rolls-Royce and Bentley clubs viewing to the people, and something I really didn't expect today. I've only ever seen it in a magazine. This is the Rolls-Royce Spectre, the new EV, and I have with me here from Brisbane Rolls-Royce, Ben. Great
Hi,
name
guys.
for a start.
I know.
Mate, tell us about this extraordinary machine.
Well, first of all, it's a great pleasure to be here, part of the Federal Rally for 2024, here in the beautiful Noosa region. And today I brought up our dealership demo, our 2024 Rolls-Royce Spectre, finished in Tempest grade, with the famous Mandarin coach line down here, and matching on the rim there as well with the wing spoke wheels. Largest rim ever to be put on a Rolls-Royce. So
what's that, about a 23
inch? 23
inch, yeah. Are you hot rodding fans out there? This is the way to do it.
And some other special features if we come around to the front of the car. This is the widest grille ever on a Rolls-Royce. So the Pantheon grille it's the widest and narrowest as well.
Right.
It is all illuminated. And
really?
Compared to a traditional Rolls-Royce, this is not used for cooling down the engine.
Sure.
Because there is no engine.
Okay.
Right? And also our Rolls-Royce Spirit of Ecstasy has been redesigned. Over 840 hours have been worked on changing her wing design. She has now a more forward intent, and she's a bit smaller compared to...
So not quite so much wind drag for an EV,
exactly,
right?
And it is part of the aerodynamics as well.
Oh, really?
So,
okay. So it's quite a bit of thought's gone into that.
Oh, it is, yeah. And it is also illuminated too. So at night time, you'll see the light up underneath her wings.
Right.
So when you're driving along at night, you just see the wings lit up. And it's just beautiful to see.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, mate.
Yeah.
So tell me about the basic specs of the car, mate. What sort of horsepower and torque are we talking?
We're looking at about 440, 450 kilowatts.
Okay. With
about 800 newton meters of torque.
All right.
So
in Rolls-Royce speak, I believe they call it adequate.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that right?
Well, it is the most powerful Rolls-Royce ever made for production.
Right. Wow.
It is. We don't really talk about 0 to 100, but 0 to 100 it's in about 4.5 seconds. It's probably faster than that. They in testing they did make it a lot faster, but because it's 3 ton, the weight of the car and everything like that, it's just not a enjoyable driving experience being that fast and that heavy. And so they've made it just the perfect power to weight for the effortless driver.
A nice blend.
That's right.
A nice blend. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Mate, I'm standing here across from you thinking you got the best job in the world.
Thank you, Ben.
Tell me about your background in cars, mate.
This year is my 3rd year with Rolls-Royce Motor Cars. 26 years in the motor industry now. I started off as a little boy with Mercedes-Benz in 1999 in Melbourne. And I've worked for Mercedes-Benz, Porsche, BMW, and before Rolls-Royce, I was with Ferrari. I was the ambassador for Ferrari for a few years as well. So
that's special, mate. Well done.
like as a little boy, I still remember my little Matchbox car in the silver in the silver cloud, and yeah, I've been a fan forever, like most of the people here, I'd say.
Where do you go from here?
I know.
Mate? You just stay with it. That's just fantastic.
No,
well, look, Ben, thank you so much for bringing this extraordinary
pleasure,
machine here. We're going to do a bit of a video footage around it. So all you aspiring EV owners, this is the pinnacle of where you want to be. Thank you so much for coming today, mate. It's
Thanks,
great
Ben.
stuff. Good on you. ladies and gents, one thing I've noticed through being involved in community organisations that I've had the honour to be with for quite a while is that there's often 3 or 4 people in every organisation who do 90-odd% of the work, and it doesn't matter whether it's a soccer club, a rural fire brigade, or a Rolls-Royce club. And I'd like to introduce you to Brian. Brian is the president, El Presidente of the Rolls-Royce Drivers Club of Queensland. Brian, what an amazing undertaking. How long have you been involved with the mark now?
I've been in the club about 15 years, and so have my 2 sons. One of them's just arrived, and we've really been involved in almost every function that the club has held. I've been involved in 3 federal rallies that have been organised for Queensland. This is the 3rd one. I didn't have such a big part in this one, but I've been president for 3 years. I'm very fortunate the committee that we have runs like a well-oiled machine.
That helps.
We're also very good friends. We all also have the same sort of mindset about these things and the sort of standards that our members expect, which is very important. People don't come to an event like this to run on dirt roads and attend pub lunches every day. We'll do that one day perhaps, but not every day. So we have our black tie dinner tomorrow night, and that's fully subscribed to 200 people.
Fantastic.
And that's a real showcase event, and there's a lot of trophies to be awarded. You'll see as behind us there's a number of good cars here, and I've got no doubt at least a couple behind us are probably going to be going up onto the stage and receiving an award. I'd be surprised if one of them wasn't. So you can, over those years, start to guess how good some cars are, even though I'm not an expert, particularly with the pre-war cars. But I have a post-war car, which I attend all my events in. I've driven to almost every state in the country at least twice in it.
Wow.
And I enjoy the contacts that I get and the friendships that I've made. And that's part of the reason why I like staying involved.
So folks, as we sort of come down the line here at the Concours today, we've moved from the early 90s and we're now coming back into
79.
79. So I'm standing here with Brett. Brett, I know, has a long history with Rolls-Royce and a passion for the mark. Tell me about this car, Brett.
Well, mine's a 79 Silver Shadow 2. I'm technically probably the second owner of the car because the original owner, and then the next owner owned it. It was actually a friend of mine that owned it for about 3 months, and I bought it off him. So I was lucky to get it. So I always call myself the second owner, really. Okay. Yeah. And I've owned it for about 26 years now.
Wow.
And I'm also the longest serving vice president of the Rolls-Royce Club.
Well, that's a passion, mate. What got you involved in Rolls-Royce in the first place?
Oh, well, look, even as a kid, I loved them. I always remember chasing this bloody car that was in, I can't say bloody car.
You can say anything you like. We're all adults here.
Yeah, no, chasing around after a car that was parked outside a shop down around the corner from where I live. And, you know, I loved Silver Shadow so much then, I could recognise it by just one headlight that I could see, and I was about 10, and I thought, that's a Silver Shadow. And I rode my bike up around the corner, and it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so you become an expert at an early age.
Yeah. Sort of. But I'm not mechanical. The big joke in the club is how I, like once you start saying all those big technical words, like, you know, hit me with a technical
alternator.
I sort of glaze over. They say Brett gets that glaze.
So I love the ambience, but I leave the mechanical to somebody else.
Correct.
Fair enough. And is this your first Rolls-Royce?
Yes, it's my only one.
Wow.
And I loved it so much, that's all I ever wanted. So
Fantastic.
yeah, it's been great.
It's a beautiful car. So tell me about the car. You said you're sort of like the second custodian.
Yep.
Was it in this condition when you got hold of it?
Yes, I was very lucky. The man that owned it was a famous hotelier, and this was his Brisbane car apparently, and he only ever used it about 3 weeks of the year. The other times it was driven was when it was taken out to be serviced.
Wow.
So it had 32,000 kilometres on the clock when I bought it 26 years ago. It was 17 years old then, and since then it's just rolled over 71,000 kilometres.
So, well, look, mate, it's a beautiful car. I'm not even going to touch on how you managed to get the suit to match the car. But I would say that's style for you. Thank you so much for bringing it along, mate, and thank you for having a chat with us.
Thanks. Okay, thanks, guys.
So folks, to go from the concourse, just briefly, there is more to come, to a lovely guy by the name of Ben and his journey with Rolls-Royce. He doesn't just buy them, he builds them. So Ben, look, thank you so much for sitting here in this 36-degree heat and 90% humidity in front of your beautiful Silver Cloud. I'd just like to start by asking, what got you fascinated by cars in the first place, mate?
Inbuilt.
Inbuilt?
Inbuilt, right from as long as from a kid. Nobody in my family's been particularly keen on them, but no, that was always my thing, was the model toys. And Dad, later on, did actually buy a Mark 10 Jaguar. I was the one that did all the work on it, pulling carbies off so you could free up starter motors.
And how old were you when that was going
on?
on?
14, I suppose.
Right. Wow. And this was in New Zealand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And, you know, with a mate, we sort of bought an old jalopy for going up riverbeds and things like that. I don't think we ever got another riverbed, but, you know, we had tried it. No, always. So, Jaguars were my original thing.
Why Jags?
You know.
Why not?
Why not? You know.
Great space and pace.
I've had a couple of, Mark II was the first one I ever had, then an E-Type, and then more Mark IIs and more E-Type, and more E-Types, and etc.
Right.
And then later on, when life permitted, decided to branch out a little bit and try a few other makes. But it's been probably Jaguars for the first 40 years, and then branching out into a few other bits and pieces.
Right. And you never decided to go down the line of the two wheels, always four?
I got bribed by my parents not to.
Ah, really?
Yes.
Right, okay. What did they bribe you with then?
A car.
Ah, right.
The trade-off was no motorbikes until I was 21.
Right.
By which stage I'd got interested enough in the cars. And so I was still, I think they'd seen how I drove, so they thought, well, let's keep them on four wheels rather than...
Yeah, sure. So now you're a pilot for much of your career too. So was there no plans to ever sort of branch out into classic airplanes? It was always four wheels.
No, but cars and boats are my interests, and flying was a very pleasurable way of earning an income,
Fair enough.
which kept me in boats and cars.
Sure. Fantastic. So Ben, you've got an extraordinary engineering brain. I look around at your workshop here and just talk about shed envy, mate. If anyone's going to be guilty of shed envy, it's me today. So obviously there's an engineering part to, or a part to flying which comes from an analytical side. How did that carry over into the mechanical side of things for you?
Well, no, the mechanical side was long before that. I mean, it made the flying and doing the exams much easier.
Right.
And I actually, at one stage in New Zealand, before I went to Papua New Guinea first in the 80s, I was, brackets, unemployed, and I started training as an aircraft engineer. I've got about half an aircraft engineer's license. Right. And then I went back flying.
Okay.
I loved it. It was good.
Yeah, fantastic.
So when I had a little flying school, I was maintaining my own aircraft with the engineer supervising and then signing things off under supervision.
Yep.
But no, I've always enjoyed the engineering. I'd also helped. Most pilots have a second, an original career, and the particular guys I hang around with all fitters and turners and stuff like that. So, you know, they would come up in the conversation, and when you had either visiting their place where they had lathes or had my own machines, oh, Ben, you do this, or sort this out. So, so that helped. Fantastic. And books. And stuffing things up and saying, well, I'll try and remember not to do that one again.
So, Ben, tell me about the Phantom, the 1925 Phantom. It's got a beautiful plaque that I believe was built by somebody in a local men's shed. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, and it says new Phantom. So explain that to me, mate. It doesn't look very new to me.
Like most manufacturers, well, Ford, for example, Ford never built a Zephyr Mark 1. A Jaguar never had a Jaguar Mark 1.
Right.
They always retrospectively named when they have a Mark 2 Jag or a Mark 2 Zephyr, and the same with the Phantom.
Right.
So I don't know why they're called the new Phantom, because they never had a Phantom before. So from Phantom 2, and it's now the Phantom 8, that then retrospectively is now more usually known as a Phantom 1.
All right. So maybe it was more of a press release thing. Lord Fauntleroy, come and view the new Phantom.
I think that's probably that's a reasonable assumption.
And how long have you had that car now?
About 12 years now. I'm just the third owner. It's been in Australia all its life. The original owner was a guy called Bunny Nagel, sheep farmer from Cunnamulla.
Sheep farmer?
Yes.
Don't tell me it got turned into a ute.
It got turned into a ute.
Oh, no.
And he was over in England with his family. Remember, not that long after World War One with all the trenches, which means duffel coats and that. So anybody that was running sheep did very nicely out of it, thank you. And normally there's about a 9 months lead time because you'd order the car through the bodybuilder, but this car was a returned car. Lord Maidstone ordered it as a present for his wife, who took one look and said, I don't want it, I want one with wind-up windows, apparently. So it got returned to the showroom, which was unusual, having a new Rolls-Royce available for sale on the spot, and Bunny saw it and bought it, apparently.
Wow.
Took his family around Europe and then shipped it to Sydney in 1926. And was out on the farm out there and went into disrepair, I'm guessing sometime after the war due to fuel rationing, and it had been turned into a ute, as I said. Got purchased by Nina Haynes, who was a chemist up in Sunshine Coast, who also built something called the Castle a bit before my time.
Oh, I know the Castle. Yeah,
right, okay, well that was him.
Right.
And then he restored the body. He had enough components of the original body to be able to recreate it. And I purchased it from him.
So what condition was it in when
drivable.
You came across? It was drivable.
It was drivable.
Okay, so it's not a complete basket case. It's solid and it's there. And had you any inkling in terms of exactly what was going to be required to get that car to a standard that you were happy with before you purchased it?
None whatsoever. Absolutely none.
You got to be mad, right? You got to be mad to do this stuff.
It's cool. It was a fairly steep learning curve.
Right. How many years to put it where it is now?
Well, I mean, this last trip, I've had it on 4 long trips, and this is so I think I mentioned earlier on, we took it down to Victoria for a 20 Goes Rally in October. We covered 5,000 kilometres. Wow. And it ran beautifully the whole time. And that's the 4th trip I've been on, and we've had issues on all the other trips. One had to come on the back of a truck.
So the indignity.
But we got there. It still could do. The body work could still be neater and tidier, but mechanically it's pretty good now. Reliable.
So folks, if you love what we do, feel free to like and subscribe, but you might want to consider actually supporting us through our Patreon crowdfunding platform. But we're standing here in front of an absolute pristine example of a Rolls-Royce Silver Dawn, Silver Cloud,
Silver Cloud.
Silver Cloud,
Cloud 3,
Series
yeah.
3.
Series 3.
And this is Alan, by the way, folks.
Gale.
Welcome to meet Alan. What year is this one, Alan?
1963.
Mhm.
I'm the proud second custodian, is the term that's given to owners.
Like a child.
And the history of the car is fascinating.
So tell me about that.
It was purchased in August 1963 by a man described appropriately as a gentleman from Kello Faulkner, a well-known Melbourne-based Rolls-Royce distributor,
Right.
for the princely sum of £9,553,
Wow.
which in those days would have bought at least half a dozen Holdens, I
Right.
think.
Or a couple of houses, I would imagine.
Or, as my wife said, a house. At
Yeah,
least.
okay.
Yes.
House on wheels.
So it remained in his ownership until he died, and then his wife refused to sell it, so it lay fallow for a couple of years.
Wow.
And it was found by a specialist in Melbourne who looks after vintage cars, who offered to upgrade it, make sure that everything worked well, and the wife then decided to sell it. I heard on the grapevine the old story. I'd been looking for a Cloud 3 for a while,
Right.
and I heard that this one was available, so my wife and I flew to Melbourne. We saw the car. It had 46,000 miles only on it, so it barely run in. It's still only done 72,000 miles, and it was immaculate, absolutely immaculate. And to cut a long story short, I mortgaged the house and bought it. I'm joking, of course.
That's dedication.
But I bought it, and we've owned it ever since. We've nurtured it, and in terms of motor advertising, it's been fastidiously maintained.
Right.
And it's washed and polished regularly. It goes on runs every month to keep it circulating.
Yeah, good.
And
But it's a joy.
that's the story.
It's a joy. So,
It's a 6-litre V8, so it has a ton of power,
right.
but you don't talk about fuel consumption.
No. Frightening.
Yes. Well, in the old terminology, it'd be about 5 miles per gallon.
Oh, really? All
That's
right.
it.
That's certainly getting up there.
Yeah.
98 or 91 are we running?
91.
91.
Because
Okay.
it was
all right.
pre-unleaded.
Yes, right. Okay. So, Alan, you said that when you got hold of the car, it was in immaculate condition. Had
Yes.
it been restored?
No. When Simon and Elliot, who was the chap who looked after him, who said he'd tidy it up for the wife of the original owner, he replaced a couple of hoses, I think, washed and polished it. This is the original paintwork still.
Okay.
It's never been touched. The upholstery is all original. The woodwork's original. It's a unique car.
Oh, man. Folks, when you come to a concourse such as this, and especially for a marque such as Rolls-Royce, which has been around for a long, long time now, you're going to see vehicles that really span the ages. So you'll see things right back from the 1920s and earlier through to the latest model vehicles. But here I'm standing next to one from the late 80s, early 90s, and its proud owner is Richard.
Yes.
Richard, and I believe this is a silver spur.
Yeah.
Silver spur. So that's
Silver Spur 2.
okay. And
Yeah.
that's, how does that differ from, let's say, a silver spirit?
Well, the Spirit is about 4.5 inches shorter than a Spur.
Okay.
You can see it in the back window and the back door.
Right.
Gives you more leg room in the back of the car.
Okay. So it's a slightly stretched version of
It's a stretch,
the red.
like a stretch.
So this is a little more exclusive than the other. Would that be fair
Well, I
to say?
would think so, yes.
Okay. All right. And how long have you had this one, mate?
I've had this 2.5 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And was it in this condition when you got it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It's probably in better condition now because I wiped metho on the bottom of it.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
you've really cleaned it
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wonderful, mate. And how did you come across this one?
I found it at Lloyd's Auctions in Altama in Melbourne.
Okay.
And I started bidding for it. I got a bit of a fright, so I backed off. Then I rang the Lloyd's a couple of days later, and the gentleman I spoke to said, the owner has just picked it up, he's taken it home.
Ah.
I said, well, you better ring him up. I
Right.
made an offer,
Yep.
and he brought it back.
Right.
And then I got it trucked up to home.
Fantastic,
Yeah,
mate.
yeah.
Wonderful. And is this your first Rolls-Royce? Or have you...
No, I had a Spur before, a Spirit before this, an 88, and I sold that and replaced it with this.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. So you've had two, is that
yeah,
right?
Yes, and I've got a Bentley at home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What year's the Bentley?
The Bentley's a 92.
Right. So similar sort of vintage to these
Oh,
ones.
yeah.
Okay, mate. So tell me about your history with cars, Richard. It's not everybody gets into Rolls Royces.
Apart from everything else, I went out to buy an FB Holden wagon, two-tone green.
Was this your first one that
My
we talked
first
about?
car when I was
Okay.
17.
Right.
I bought a new one. So when I was able to buy an old one, couldn't find it,
Right.
and I came across the Spirit on eBay, and I bought one from Victoria, from New South Wales, and then I kept that for a couple of years, 3 years I think. Then I bought this.
I'd like to introduce you to Frank.
Hello.
Frank's part of the Rolls-Royce in Queensland, the Queensland Rolls-Royce Drivers Club. Frank, tell us about this amazing event, mate. I believe this has happened over nearly a week now.
Thanks, Ben. I'm the rally director for the 66th Australian Rally of Rolls-Royce and the Bentley owners.
Okay.
We had a very successful rally in Toowoomba exactly 5 years ago. The Noosa Rally has been a great success so far, apart from a little rain that you mentioned. But we've really got some great cars, some very late model cars, some early cars, going back to 1911, I think, is the earliest Silver Ghost that you'll see on Sunday tomorrow.
Right.
Great competition here today, and we've got world-class judges going over cars very carefully. So it's very serious here today at St Andrew's Anglican College in Bridgeon Springs.
Right. So, Frank, tell me about your association with Rolls-Royce, mate. How long has this gone back for you?
We bought our first Rolls-Royce, a Silver Spur, in 2010, and since then have been in love with the marque. We have a number of Rolls-Royces and Bentleys,
Right.
Among others, and we just love the marque. I'm one of the trustees of the Sir Henry Royce Foundation.
That's in Coolum, up here in
Beach.
Queensland.
We have a showroom there, and that foundation is the repository for all things historical about Rolls-Royce and Bentley in this country. So I'm very positive about the marque. I think that the legacy left by the late Sir Henry Royce and Charlie Rolls is very significant. Today, Bentley is producing over 13,000 new Bentleys each year. Rolls-Royce motor cars produce just over 6,000 new motor cars for the world market.
So there's that exclusivity that's still there with Rolls-Royce, and to maybe a lesser degree with Bentley, would you say?
The Bentley cars obviously are becoming more popular. Twice as many are being sold.
Right.
And I think the heritage of Walter Owen Bentley was protected and enhanced by Rolls-Royce motor cars for many decades. So it is a very solid brand. Many of us still seem to think these days it's the sporting driver's Rolls-Royce. They're both lovely cars and distinctive in their own way.
Right. So folks, we've presented you with some of the cars on display here today, and you will go from the very, very ultra. We've had a look at the latest Spectre EV, and then we come down to where pretty much the whole thing started. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to a man who knows as much about this as anyone is ever going to know. This is Mark Jansen. This is his beautiful Rolls-Royce, and I'm going to hand it over to Mark to tell you about this extraordinary car.
Well, thank you and good morning. So, yeah, we've brought along our 1923 Rolls-Royce 20. So it's the baby of the fleet, small engine, small horsepower car. This has got a really interesting history in provenance. This was, in fact, the first Rolls-Royce sold new into Queensland by the dealer when they set up here in 1923.
Wow.
And it was actually bodied in Brisbane by a company called Peel's Engineering. So they did one Rolls-Royce, they're based in Woolloongabba, and it was this car. So the car still retains its original body.
Right.
So in terms of Queensland Rolls-Royce history, it's a really significant car.
So, Mark, if we sort of put that in context, not everybody may understand, but once upon a time when you bought a vehicle from a manufacturer such as Rolls-Royce, you're buying, I believe, the engine, the chassis, the drivetrain, and then you took it to a coach builder to have a bespoke body built.
Absolutely right. So many cars would have left the UK as a rolling chassis. So as you say, it's basically exactly that. It's a chassis with an engine and running gear, and I guess you could drive it, but no body. So there were businesses in Australia that bodied cars, and not just Rolls-Royces. Some of them were bodied in the UK by people there and then sent here as complete cars. But Australia did get a lot of rolling chassis back in the day, and there were lots of coach builders. The most noted is probably Martin and King, which were probably the biggest in Australia.
And where were they, mate? Where were
in
they
Melbourne.
based? In Melbourne.
Yeah, and they did a lot of Rolls-Royces and Bentleys. And interestingly, the other sort of digress a bit here, but it wasn't uncommon when people might have had a car for 5 years, rather than buy a new car, they often got them rebodied. So that was a trend back in the day. Yeah. So
that's the ultimate recycling there.
Exactly right. Yeah. So
to be bodied in Brisbane, that would be quite rare. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, it would be. I mean, Peels were in Wollongabba. They did one Rolls-Royce, which was this car. I'm sure there would have been other coach builders in Brisbane, but most of the manufacturing was still down south in Melbourne and Sydney. Was where a lot of these cars were bodied. Yeah.
So tell me how you happened upon this one, mate.
Oh, look, this car belonged to a good client of mine who's become a friend, and he was selling some cars from his collection. And this was my first foray into a vintage car, and we just kind of fell in love with it and just loved the story. I love a story about cars, you know, that whole history provenance thing. And as I've got older, my interest in cars has diversified, and I thought it'd be a lot of fun to have a vintage Rolls-Royce, and it's a great community to be part of, and it's good to have it along here today.
They're nice people, aren't they? They're really
a wonderful group of people. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's the cars that bring people together that have a common interest.
For sure. Yeah. If you want to talk about old cars, here's the man to go and see. Mate, thank you so much for bringing this along today. I think it's just a wonderful old piece of, it's rolling art. It really
look, it is. And I think that's where events like this are wonderful, because it gives people the reason, not that you should need it, but quite often with these older cars, when there is a special event, you put it in the diary, you work towards it, and you know there are cars here from all over Australia. So, and that's really what it's about. So,
it is a great thing.
Yeah,
it is a great thing. Thanks again, mate.
No worries.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Speaking of Rolls-Royce, if there's one car that Rolls-Royce made which not exactly brought it to the masses, but sort of certainly made it a wider appeal, it was the Silver Shadow. And I have here Larry and Ruth, who are the most extraordinary couple, because here we are in Coolum, near Noosa, in sunny Queensland, he says, with rain clouds above. And these people have driven this car from Victoria, or Larry's driven this car from Victoria. Folks, welcome to Coolum. Thank you for bringing this beautiful car along. Tell us about Cordelia.
Cordelia.
Cordelia is the name of the car.
Well, Larry named her Cordelia, so I'll let him tell the story of Cordelia.
So, for those of you who know King Lear, there were three sisters, Goneril, Reagan, and Cordelia, who was the youngest and the nicest one. And although she's listening, she's more of a Goneril than a Reagan, but she was in poor condition when I got her, and only now, nearly 20 years later of ownership, did she drive from Melbourne to Noosa without stopping once, other than for petrol.
So, Larry, to use a Shakespearean theme here, this is more like the taming of the shrew, isn't it?
No, she's way worse than that.
So tell us about some of the trips that you've done in her.
Well, for a very long time I didn't do much because she was so unreliable that I couldn't drive distance with confidence. But after about a decade and a half, we got her to the Geelong Rally, and then the Canberra Rally, and other Victorian club local drives.
Right.
And then this one has been the big one.
Right.
A 4-day trip over 2,200 Ks.
Well, in the rain, I believe.
Well, we had this nice low sitting over the southeast coast, and she went through pelting rain for 3 days. And I have to say, I didn't use the windscreen wipers because they are next to useless.
Right.
So I put ceramic coated glass cleaner.
Yep.
So that it would bead.
It would bead off.
Yeah.
That's one thing about old British cars, folks. Despite the fact they get a lot of rain over there, the windscreen wipers are tiny and very, very slow.
Yes.
I know that from Jags.
And just generally crap.
So, Ruth, you were telling me there was a trip that you did to Canberra where she, to coin your phrase, she lied to you. Tell me about that.
She's we should be careful because
she's listening. She's listening.
She can be lovely. She can be really lovely, and she's lovely to drive in. She's very comfortable, sedate, serene drive when she's driving. But sometimes she fails to proceed. And so on that particular trip, first of all, she lied to us. She said that she was overheating, but in fact she wasn't. It was just the temperature gauge, but everything was fine. And then a little bit later, she actually did break down.
Right.
And was fixed, and Larry had to have her towed to
Narendra, and I was looking at her through the back window of the tow truck, and she was smiling at me through the window.
She's
loving the view. She was loving the view.
That's wonderful. Well, look, if there's ever a truism that life is about the journey and not the destination, and it sounds like the journeys you've had in her have just been really quite memorable. So look, thank you for the amazing effort to bring her up here to Queensland. I think she's an absolute credit to you, and no doubt we will see more of her in the video as we go through. Folks, thanks once again, and I almost feel like saying, can you please text me when you get home? Just to make sure you get there on safe.
I did phone the car carriers this morning.
Right. Okay. So we've got a backup plan.
That's right.
Well done. Well, thank you, Larry.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for having us on.
So, folks, part of the appeal of coming to car shows like this is not only to get to see amazing cars, but if you really got an ear for it, you get to hear the backstory behind the car. So I'm standing in front of this beautiful British Racing Green Bentley. I'm standing next to the proud custodian, John, and I'm going to let John take the story of this car and how he came about it.
Well, yes, it's a 1996 Turbo S, quite a rare car. There are only 3 in Australia and 60 built. The motor is a Cosworth-built motor. So in the year of 1995, when it was built, it was exceptionally powerful, 408 horsepower.
Wow.
It will do 0 to 60 in 6 seconds, and that's pretty good going for a car that weighs 2.5 tons.
2.5 tons, wow.
Like I say, there's only 3 in Australia. And actually, that's not quite correct because there are 3 and 2 halves. There's one car somewhere near Toowoomba, I understand, that's cut in half because that's the only way you can bring them in if they're less than 30 years old, which is a difficult car to maintain. Costs a lot of money to maintain them.
Right.
You need to, well, in my case, you need to have a little bit of know-how, otherwise I could never afford it.
Fantastic, mate. So is this your first sort of dabble into Rolls-Royce Bentley?
No, I've had 2 Rolls-Royces, and then I wanted something a bit more powerful, so I had a black Bentley Turbo R that wasn't quite as powerful, but then when I saw this one for sale, and especially the lady that sold it me, she knew how to sell a car. She put me in the driver's seat, I backed it out of the drive, she said, put your foot down. So I did, and it stuck me to the seat, and I thought, I've got to buy this one. Yeah.
John, thank you so much for bringing it along today.
Sow the seed and watch it grow.
That's the one.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
If your friend, family member, whoever it is, has got a car that you'd love to see featured on the show, then right down the bottom of the screen here is where you're going to find a link to it.